commission, members of the commission, public and staff will be participating via teleconference. As shown on the agenda and online, please email all written public comments to planning@oxnard.org. Those wishing to speak may visit oxnard.org/city-meetings to fill out the speaker form, or by calling 805-385-7878 by 3 p.m. the day of the meeting. During the meeting, a 3-minute opportunity will be given to the public for additional members to participate and provide comments after each item. Members of the public are requested to email planning@oxnard.org or submit a speaker form on the city's website. When participating in the meeting, please keep your microphones muted until your turn to speak. My colleagues, please use the raise hand feature when you wish to speak. Thank you. Once you've been, please use the raise hands feature. Once you've been called on, please click the hand again to lower. Because the meeting is electronic, all votes will be done by roll call. Lastly, for presenters, when needing to advance to the next slide, please clearly state next slide. Once again, I'll just reiterate, please keep your microphones muted at all times until your turn to speak. With that, we'll go to our Madam Secretary to establish our quorum.
Chair Chavez.
Here.
Vice Chair Ovejo.
Here.
Commissioner Connolly.
Here.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
Here.
Commissioner Meyer is absent. Commissioner Nash.
Here.
Commissioner Sanchez.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And I believe it is Commissioner Dr. Lopez's turn to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
You could
Chair,
please stand if able. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez. We'll go ahead and move to our next item, which is for public comments for items not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to address the Planning Commission regarding any item not on the agenda, but within the subject matter's jurisdiction of the commission may do so at this time. However, the commission cannot take action on any items presented during public comments and will be referred to the commission secretary. All public comment speakers will have 3 minutes. Madam Secretary, just to confirm that we did not have anyone sign up to speak, correct?
Correct.
Any members that are on the call currently wishing to speak for this item may use the raise hand feature and then you would be called on. Again, members of the public that wish to provide comments for items not on the agenda may visit the city's website to fill out the speaker form or by emailing planning@oxnard.org, which will be monitored by our staff. Commissioner Dr. Lopez, I had mentioned to the other commissioners that since we have 3 minutes in between each item, and this is our last meeting right before Thanksgiving, that we kind of do go around and say what we're thankful for, and I'll kick it off. And of course, it's optional if everyone wants to participate, but I just want to say that I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful that we are healthy and that I get to have a roof over my head. Sometimes we take those things for granted, and I'm very thankful for that. Thankful for my job, and I'm thankful for my community. A lot of good people in this community, and I'm thankful for them all. So those are my comments, and if anyone else wants to jump in, feel free to do so.
Chair Chavez, this is Scott Kolbitz in the chambers. I'm going to be thankful for a very technical thing here that I just wanted to share with you as well as members of the public. On the bottom of the screen, you'll notice that we have the Zoom dial-in phone number identified now on the not the racer. But if anyone from the public wants to join our meeting at any point in time during the meeting, we're going to keep that number there, as well as the meeting ID, as well as the passcode. So that could help facilitate any of these items that we have. So I'm thankful for our IT staff for having the foresight and the technical wizardry to make that possible for all of us. And with that, I'll turn the microphone back to you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Kolowitz. And I do believe I see it on our agenda as well. So that's more options for people to join. Commissioner Connolly.
I don't see the number.
It would be if you were actually watching from like YouTube or from the actual site. It's not going to show on our side.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, it's been 3 minutes and I haven't received any new public speakers.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. So we'll go ahead and proceed to our next item, which is our consent agenda. Actually, we have a quick announcement, Mr. Kolowitz.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So staff, in our efforts to get the packet together for the rather large packet you all received, so thank you for getting through all those materials. We did not finish the minutes that are identified in the packet. So with that, we are asking these items to be continued again to December 2nd. I will again reiterate to the Planning Commission that not approving the minutes is not holding up the applicants from moving forward with their projects after they get through your public review period. So with that, we would be looking for a motion to continue to December 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. Kolowitz. With that recommendation, commissioners, is there a motion? Vice Chair Rejo.
Thank you, Chair. I move to postpone consideration of the approval of these minutes, particularly October 7, October 13, October 21, and November 4 to the next regularly scheduled meeting, which looks like to be December 2.
Thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner Connolly.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and second to continue the approval of the minutes from our October 7th, October 13th, October 21, and November 4th meeting to a date certain of December 2nd. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Secretary, if we can have the roll call, please.
Vice Chair Weho,
Aye.
Commissioner Connolly,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez,
Aye.
Commissioner Nash,
Aye.
Commissioner Sanchez,
Yes.
Chair Chavez,
Aye.
motion passes.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and proceed to our next item, which is our ex parte declarations for public hearing. Vice Chair Rejo.
None, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Connolly.
None. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
I actually drove by both sites.
Thank you. Commissioner Nash.
Nothing to declare, Chair Chavez. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sanchez.
Nothing to declare.
Thank you. And none from myself. So we'll go ahead and proceed to our first public hearing item. Project name is the Victoria Market Alcohol Special Use Permit. Planning and zoning permit number 21-510-02 special use permit alcohol. A request for approval of a special use permit to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits for off-site consumption. This is an ABC license type 21 at an existing 2,326 square foot commercial suite within a 16,770 square foot building for a proposed convenience store market on a 1.1 acre site located at 600 South Victoria Avenue, suite number 700 and 800. This is within the general commercial plan development zone. Alcohol sales shall be limited to 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. daily. This is filed by Rasim Farhat, designated agent on behalf of the property owner. Our city staff person is Randy Bays, associate planner. The recommendation is that the Planning Commission find the project to be categorically exempt from environmental review pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 15301, existing facilities, and approve the resolution 2021-XX approving planning and zoning permit number 21-510-02 special use permit alcohol, subject to certain findings and conditions. As a reminder to the public and my colleagues, a pre-recorded presentation of this item is available on the city's website and YouTube channel in accordance with Measure M. And as a reminder, please keep your microphones muted at all times during the meeting until your turn to speak. Thank you. And we'll go to our staff person on this.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. We have not received any additional comments from the public.
Yep. And our Measure M video, as you stated, was posted online. So with that, staff would be available for any questions that the Planning Commission may have about the project.
Thank you, Mr. Kowitz. Do we have a presentation from the applicant, or are they only available for questions?
We do have the applicant that wishes to speak.
Okay. And who?
Mr. Ponzarello.
Ponzarello. Okay. Mr. Ponzarello, you are on mute, sir. So you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you, everyone, for having us here this evening. I'm here with Mr. Wasim Farah, the applicant. I'm a food and beverage consultant. I help people get licenses and permits they need for the type of businesses they're operating, especially restaurants. I've been doing this for about 35 years. In this case, we kind of put the cart before the horse. Mr. Farhat won from the ABC lottery last year, a full alcohol license, a 21 license, and the state gave him 1 year to find a location. And he saw this location and fell in love with it. So we did our due diligence. We made sure it was not a high concentration area of licenses. We made sure that it was a low crime area compared to the average citywide crime statistics. We also called the liaison to the Oxnard Police Department, Mr. Scott Swenson, on site prior to signing the lease. And he encouraged us to go ahead forward with it also at that time. And so we started the process with the Oxnard Planning Department. A special thank you to Mr. Randy Baez for his assistance in getting us here this evening. As you know, the location is over 2,300 square feet. It's a kind of a large space for a convenience store. We're kind of a convenience store market. We do have hours of operation 6 to 11. We don't have late hours of operation. We have over 51 conditions that the applicant has been aware of and accepts them, including surveillance, signage, training of all employees and such like also. We're hoping for your support in supporting the findings and the conditions given to us by the planning department. We hope to have a long relationship with the city of Oxnard. We're responsible people. We take consideration of our neighbors, and we promise to continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Commissioners, will go to you to ask any questions of the applicant or staff. Again, just clearly state who you're directing your questions towards. Commissioner Connolly.
I just have 2 quick questions for the applicant. I know your license says that you can sell beer, wine, and hard alcohol. Do you plan on selling hard alcohol as well?
Yes, that is true. The license we have is a type 21, which is an off-sale full alcohol license. So we'll be selling distilled spirits along with the beer and wine. There are conditions in play that govern that.
Perfect. I know the other 2 retailers that were mentioned in the presentation and in our notes, they don't sell hard alcohol. So that's a good thing for you guys, I guess. So
yes, and one of them was mentioned, I believe, is a sushi restaurant. That is an on-sale license, not an off-sale license. It's a 47, and that's just for restaurant use.
perfect. And then just another question for Mr. Farrett. Are you out of area? Are you familiar with Oxnard? Do you have a second home here, or are you familiar with the area?
Yeah, actually, hi everybody. I live in Oxnard. I have my house in Oxnard, and my work right now, I have a restaurant in Santa Barbara, So this is my project in like close to my house actually. I live by the St. John Hospital on Rose and Gonzalez. And I find that when I win the lottery, I find that a good opportunity to get a business in my city, you know. So it's a good plan for the future to get close to my house and be close to my family as well.
Welcome. Thank you for that clarification. I know there was a Los Angeles address on here, so I'm glad we could clarify that for the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Commissioner Connolly. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
Thank you. One quick question for the applicant also. So you mentioned, or it was in the report, that you plan to sell between the hours of 6 a.m. and 11 p.m., correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's going to be the hours of operation for the store.
Okay, so like the store would be closing at 11 and then until the following morning.
That's correct. There'd be an operation after 11 p.m. until 6 a.m. the next morning.
And that's 7 days a week?
That'll be 7 days a week. It's mostly for the weekdays at 6 a.m. because people are out on the streets at that time motorizing, and they're going to be a convenience for them. But on the weekends too, we'll be opening those hours.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to get that clarified because I wasn't sure if that was your intent for that to be your hours of operation or just your hours for sale and possibly open longer. And I see that some of the other locations nearby that do have licenses, they actually are open well into 1 a.m. or 1:45 a.m. So a good thing to get clarified that your hours of operation will be 6 to 11. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. I have a question for both staff and the applicant. We're actually, both questions will be for the staff. Mr. Baez, I have a question about the term off-sale consumption. How is that different from off-site consumption? Or is there a difference?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Nash. There is no practical difference. They're both used interchangeably.
Okay. Yeah, I thought at first I thought that was a typo, but then I heard the applicant use off sale. So I'll have to incorporate that into my lexicon. Officer, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the officer's name in charge of alcohol permits. Sheldon or Swenson. I'm sorry, I apologize. When does a convenience store that sells alcohol turn into a liquor store that sells, chips and snacks? How do we differentiate between the two?
I don't know that there's a clear differentiation. I've never seen a definition of either that really draws any line either with ABC or with different communities. It's certainly not established in any statute I'm aware of. I know what I consider a convenience store versus a liquor store, but that's my perception. And I would say a business that ends up selling quite a bit more in the way of general goods as opposed to liquor is a convenience store. Whereas if it's targeting just liquor and alcoholic beverages, it's more of a liquor store.
But we have no mechanism from preventing this establishment from turning into a de facto liquor store.
They're licensed to sell alcohol and we approve them that way. We don't restrict them in the quantities they sell. I don't see a differentiation under the law.
Okay, I think that's a shortcoming of that we may have to deal with, if not for this project, for future projects, because I think you can determine how much linear shelf space should be devoted to alcohol and how much shelf space and cooler space devoted to food items. So I'll have to think about this, and That concludes my questions for now, Chair Chavez. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Commissioner Nash. Okay, John Morelli, I need you to mute your microphone, please. Thank you. Commissioner Sanchez. Commissioner Sanchez, you're on mute, sir.
Thank you. So it's going to, so there's on-site consumption of alcohol as well as eating and things like that. Is that how the setup is?
No, sir. There's no on-site consumption of alcohol. There'll be signage too to warn people not to do that in the parking lot and such. Also, it's strictly for off-site or off-sale consumption. People to take it home with them or to their offices or businesses. It is not to be consumed on the property.
Okay. So sounds really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanchez. I have a couple of questions about this. What products other than the alcohol will you be selling? Because looking at the design, and I'm still trying to really identify how this design is broken down. It looks like there's a back room to prepare things at.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chavez. Basically, we have coffee service. The health department requires us to have a mop sink on the premises and a 3-compartment sink just to wash the coffee pot and other items there too. And we intend to have coffee services for customers. We're going to have all types of different dairy, milk and eggs also in our refrigerators, including other beverages and juices and teas and such also to go. The way I see this goes is that the customers tell the proprietor what items they want them to carry as far as other food items and such. They'll carry things like first aid and medicine and such, although that doesn't turn over as quickly, but it's there for the convenience of people that need it and is available. So it's like a one-stop location. But we'll be carrying all different food items, a lot of canned goods, boxed goods, in addition to the alcohol and the beer and wine. It's not his intention to be a liquor store. The distilled spirits will be behind the counter. Beer and wine will be self-service in the front. But that will be, shared with the other food and beverage items also.
I appreciate that explanation. I'm very curious, and has there been any outreach to the other tenants in the area? And if so, what has their feedback been?
I've not personally had any outreach to any other businesses. I know we had the meet and greet with the neighborhood about a month ago. The ABC sent letters out to every resident within 500 feet about 6 months ago, actually about 5 months ago. And then we also posted the premise for the ABC for 30 days. A lot of people had time to notice that this was going on. I would think that they would have commented to the planning department through email or phone call if there were concerns. I know that we're a competitor, but we intend to be a friendly competitor. We're not the Vaughn's Market that has the full alcohol license down on Victoria, further down the street, and we're not competing with the Circle K or the Arco station that are mostly gas stations and such. We're a market. We're actually larger than they are. We're 2,300 square feet or plus, and we're hoping to have the neighborhood more direct us toward what they want us to carry.
And just to clarify, this is not any like meal prepping that is going to be occurring daily. This is all prepackaged products.
It's all prepackaged items and such. The only preparation would be for cleanup for the coffee service and such. Right. We're not making sandwiches on site. All those are being brought in by a vendor. But we have those convenience items available, burritos and a microwave, things like that too. Just because some customers look for those things when they come into a store like this.
Absolutely. Mr. Swenson, I see your hand is up.
Yes, Chair Chavez. As part of my due diligence, I walk and talk to the neighboring businesses and get a general feel for what they feel. I basically lay out what the applicant's plan is and answer any questions they may have. And I had no negative feedback from the neighbors.
I appreciate that, Mr. Swenson. And I actually have a question for you before I move to you, Mr. Farrar. Mr. Swenson, because this is technically down the street from Juan Soria School, does this have that safety buffer zone that allows this type of project to come in?
I would say I am inclined to refer that to my friends in planning, but alcohol outlets near to schools generally don't have any, there's no prohibition against it. And if I could get some help from Randy Baez.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. 1 second, please.
Mr. Farrar, if you want to go ahead with your comments until staff comes back.
Okay, regarding talking to the neighbors and other tenants in the shopping center, we've been in that area right now about since we did the application, like going back and forth and like talking to the people, and we know what they want exactly, because we're the people like in the neighborhood, they're very excited about it. Actually, to be honest with you, they want to like quick stop for their daily things, like he said, like he mentioned, the food cans, milk, eggs, bacon, all that stuff, plus the bread and all tortilla, you know, like everything. Like when you need something fast, they don't want to like go to Buns and stay on the line. It's going to be convenience for them. It's like there's nobody around. Regarding the gas station next to us, they don't have all of that. They're kind of like, it's a gas station. It's different. You know, when you go to the gas station, you will not find any like kind of food. They have snacks, all kind of snacks you want, but they don't have the daily basis for the houses. And regarding the other tenants, they're really like excited about that too, because you know, having the market, having your like daily needs next to you, I mean, just like basically a walking distance, that would be great for them. We didn't find any problem with anybody so far. Like Mr. Scott mentioned that he did the walk in the neighborhood, and they didn't mention anything about it. They were really excited about that. So just I wanted to put that comment in.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Chavez, thank you for waiting. We did some additional research and we didn't see any safety buffer zone. So this project would just fall under the regular discretionary regulations.
Now, I have a question about that. Do we have any of those buffer zones in place when we deal with alcohol licensing? I know there's 2 layers to it. I know you have the ABC, and then we have our own conditions here in the city, but nowhere in there does it provide those buffer zones. Like we place buffer zones on cannabis, but we don't have anything for alcohol.
Chair Chavez, I'll take that question. The short answer is no, there aren't those regulations within the Oxnard City Code. So Randy's description of this being a discretionary decision by the Planning Commission, that is ultimately what rules the day. So, you know, generally speaking, one of your findings talks about, you know, the public welfare and safety of the community. That could be something for the Planning Commission to consider. But to get back to the idea of the technical requirements that are out there, it falls back to the concentration or undue concentration of alcohol establishments, both by our local standards, which does have a distance requirement, but that's distance requirement from other alcohol establishments of a like kind. And the linear distance for those are the 350 and 1,000-foot radius. And then the state has their own undue concentration, which is different than ours. And that looks at the number of alcohol establishments within a census tract. And we do a comparison of the average number in the census tract versus what's in this one.
I appreciate that, Mr. Kolwitz. That concludes my questions. Is there any additional questions from the commission? Seeing and hearing none, we'll open the public hearing portion for this item. This is an opportunity for the public to provide any comments on this item. Madam Secretary, just to confirm, we did not have anybody sign up for this item, correct?
No, we do not, but there are some speaker waiting in the attendee section. If they want to speak on this item, they can raise their hand by doing *9.
Correct. If you are a member of the public or anybody on that wishes to speak, you may use the raise hand feature if you're on the app itself. If you're calling in, it's *9. So I do see a hand raised by Faith Collar. Collaring.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Some reverb here. My question is, will there be smoking and vaping paraphernalia sold there at the liquor store?
So this is your 3 minutes. So you can ask and say whatever comments that you want. And then after the end, we'll go ahead and answer all those questions.
Okay, I just had that question.
Okay. So if that ends your comments, we'll turn to the applicant team to have them respond if any smoking products will be sold on the site.
Mr. Farhat would like to comment on that.
Okay.
Okay, regarding smoking, the vaping and smoke shop stuff, by the law, you can't sell the smoke like the smoke goods with the liquor store. Like you can sell cigarettes and a couple more things, but nothing like vape and all that stuff. You can't sell it. And that's what of my knowledge. Probably Mr. Scott know more about that, but you can't sell.
Yeah, let me just say that the type of license he has prohibits him from any type of paraphernalia for drug use. That's for marijuana, papers, pipes, stuff like that. He's prohibited from selling that by the type of license he has from the state. But he will sell cigarettes and maybe cigars, things like that, that are common at a liquor store.
Okay. And I completely apologize because I just messed this whole thing up. We were supposed to have our 3 minute before any responding. So if there's no additional speakers that are currently on the call wishing to speak on this item, we'll go ahead and begin our 3 minutes in accordance with AB 361. Members of the public, on the bottom of your screen that you're viewing on is a call-in number along with the credentials to be able to join our meeting. This is time for 3 minutes. Commissioner Nash.
I'll chime in on things I'm grateful for in this season of Thanksgiving. In addition to everything you mentioned, Chair Chavez, especially family, I want to stress to everyone that the older you get, the more important health becomes. And please do not take it lightly. I'm out every single day pounding out my 10,000 plus steps. And it's really done me a world of good. So I'm grateful to still be able to do that in my advanced age. I'm also grateful to be able to serve the city of Oxnard in this capacity. I think that we have a wonderful planning commission, and I'm grateful that we have so many young and knowledgeable planning commissioners. I'm always trying to recruit and endorse and support the younger generation, and this is a great way to do it. So there's many other things to be grateful for, but I'll stop there. Thank you, Chair Chavez.
Thank you for sharing, Commissioner Nash. Vice Chair Rejo.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. I would like to jump on the bandwagon and also say that having lived in the Midwest for almost 5 years, I really appreciate having any family member within 1,000 miles. And so having both sides of my family just in this county, in LA County, it's just, I know what it's like not to see or be back in California for an entire year and not see anyone. And so I'm just trying to make sure that I remember that that I do have the ability and that it is so easy and that circumstances could bring me away. And so I appreciate all the time that I have, especially for my parents. And yeah, I just, again, I want to thank having this opportunity to serve the city. I was able to do that as in a staff capacity, and I'm glad I'm able to do that now in a community setting. So anyways, thank you very much. Appreciate this time.
Thank you for sharing, Vice Chair Rejo. And we are in our last 10 seconds before our public comment portion ends.
Commissioners, it's 3 minutes. I haven't received any new public speakers.
Thank you for that, Madam Secretary. Staff, is there any additional comments?
Yes, Chair Chavez, I just wanted to add that the reference school is approximately 2,300 feet away from the project site.
I appreciate that. Commissioners, at this time, we'll go ahead and proceed to deliberations. Vice Chair Rejo.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. As I briefly mentioned in the last meeting, it is very good to have that diversity of opinion in all sets of characteristics or all parts where we are in our lives on this planning commission. For me, in this instance, alcohol or any other regulations that go with it is not my forte. So much so that I like to joke, which actually happened, that it took me until my second time to realize that a Long Island iced tea actually has alcohol in it. So in this report, I focus on the stuff that I do know more about, which is in regards to the crime statistics and the community input. And so just based on those statistics, that in this area, it's 10% of the average of commercial properties citywide. And that, in my opinion, that there's actually more community input than I would imagine for an ABC license. At this time, I intend to adopt or approve or vote in favor of the resolution. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your comments, Vice Chair Rejo. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
Thank you. Wanted to thank and acknowledge our Associate Planner, Randy Bias, on the presentation, and also a thank you to the applicant and Mr. Panzarello for joining us today. You know, in reviewing the application, I also was drawn to the report from our police department and very much appreciated the information that was included in there from Mr. Swenson and Commander Arnett. A couple of things that stood out to me, like with our vice chair, was certainly the crime statistics, but then also just the additional input that was received, including from the beat coordinator, the senior officer who directly serves and is focused on just the general quality of life issues for the immediate neighborhood there. But I also appreciated the due diligence of Mr. Swenson, who in the report, page 4, indicates that several of the nearby business operators were contacted and interviewed regarding the request to sell alcohol, and that those operators that were contacted were actually supportive of the new business and their plan to sell alcoholic beverages. As far as the area neighborhood was contacted, and I believe somewhere I also read or saw that the neighborhood chair was contacted for their input as well, and all were in strong support. I believe we might have received 1 or 2 public comments, and also want to thank and acknowledge the public for chiming in on this application. A couple of things that stood out to me, again, from the presentation were slides 9 and 10, identifying the 3 nearest establishments that do have or sell liquor license, none within the smaller 300 or 500 feet radius, but certainly 3 within the 1,000 feet, including the 2 gas stations that were referenced, the Circle K and the Arco, and then the restaurant, the sushi restaurant, a little bit further down. Appreciated Commissioner Connolly pointing out that none of the other establishments sell hard alcohol, and that will be something that is of convenience for this convenience store. I noted that the crime rate and slides were below the community average, as well as this application not being an undue concentration within the 1,000 feet or the census tract, as Mr. Kolwitz mentioned earlier, as well as neither having an undue concentration been found, or had an undue concentration been found, a special finding of public convenience or necessity would have been required, but not applicable in this case either. So like our Vice Chair Adrejo, I am also supportive and prepared to support. And if the commission as a whole finds support in approving this, I just add my congratulations. And like I say to any other business, just if successful, wish you the absolute best, because your success is Oxnard's success. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Commissioner Connolly.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Chair Chavez for asking and the applicant for answering the question about the floor plan. I know when I initially read this, I understood that it was a convenience store and that was going to sell alcohol, but in the floor plan, it said restaurant floor plan. So thank you for asking that question. And then, like I said, the applicant responding that it's not going to be a restaurant. It is going to be truly a convenience store where alcohol is not going to be consumed. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Connolly. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. Just a couple of comments. I am still a little concerned that we don't have a technical definition and that separates liquor stores from convenience stores. And I would certainly like the police department or the planning staff to come up with something. I'm also a little concerned that we don't require a buffer zone between establishments that have a liquor license, whether it's 21 or 47, and sensitive receptors such as schools. It's been my experience on the Planning Commission that when a applicant for a liquor license gets a little too close to the neighborhood school, the people really come out and voice their opposition. So if that could be, we could have a standard definition for what is an allowable distance. I would be grateful for staff for coming up with that. But I do support this, so that concludes my comments. Thank you, Chair Chavez.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Any additional comments from the commission? I'll just have a few comments to make. I share the same concerns as Commissioner Nash, that we don't have a set metric as to percentage ratio as far as alcohol versus goods, and what it falls into as far as the category, and what crosses the line that says that you're no longer a convenience store, you're a full-fledged liquor store. That's the way I interpret your comments, Commissioner Nash, and I don't mean to misinterpret it, but for me, that's what I interpreted. It also concerns me that we never decided to establish buffer zones for alcohol, where we understand that there have been a lot of oversaturations in different parts of our city. So definitely something to look into in the future is reviewing those conditions, reviewing those policies. Definitely need to take place. As far as the distance from the school, obviously it's more than 2,000 feet, so it's not an issue. I like the idea of the convenience store being able to go grab a quick carton of milk, eggs, any other product, quick, easy, versus jumping into the car and then having to drive to the grocery store. Since there hasn't been really any opposition from any sides, from the public or from businesses, I think it's obviously a good business to go into the location. I do go into this area because I have a doctor's office just across the street from this. So we will see how well it all works out. But to take a line from Commissioner Dr. Lopez is that, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to butcher this, that I wouldn't be a good champion for Oxnard if I did not believe in the business. So I wish you guys nothing but the success, and we'll see how the vote plays out. Those will end my comments. Commissioners, what is your pleasure? Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
1 second. So I'd like to move the staff recommendation. Do you want me to read the whole thing, or?
I'll read it.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Vice Chair Rejo.
I second.
Thank you. It's been moved and second for the project name Victoria Market Alcohol Special Use Permit to be found categorically exempt from environmental review pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act Guidelines Section 15301, existing facilities, and approve the resolution 2021-XX approving planning and zoning permit number 21-510-02 special use permit alcohol subject to certain findings and conditions. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Secretary, if we can have the roll call, please.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Ovejo,
Aye.
Commissioner Connolly,
Yes.
Commissioner Nash,
Aye.
Commissioner Sanchez,
Yes,
Chair Chavez,
Aye.
motion passes.
Thank you, and congratulations to the applicant team.
Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Do the
Happy
same.
holidays.
Thank
Congratulations.
you, everybody. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Good luck.
So we'll go ahead and proceed to our next item. Project name is Portofino Place. Planning and zoning permit number, planning and zoning permits number 19-500-04, 20-300-02, 20-520-02, and 20-620-02. A request for a special use permit for the construction of 92-story condominiums dwelling units, each with attached 2-car garages, 214 total visitor parking spaces, common swimming pool and playground area, 3,200 3,281 square foot recreation building, entry gates and perimeter walls, private roads, detention basin, landscaping, and associated site improvements on a 7.61 acre site located along the south side of Fifth Street at the intersections of Portofino Place, south of the Oxnard Airport. The project includes a general plan amendment request to change the 2030 general plan land use designation of the project from a business research park to residential medium. A zone change to change the zoning of the project site from business research park to multiple family, and a tentative subdivision map for a condominium proposed purposes, and to combine 3 existing lots into 2 lots. This is filed by the law offices of K.M. Neswender. Our city staff person is Cedro Figueroa, principal planner, and the recommendation is to adopt resolution 2021-XX, recommending that the city council adopt the amendment to previously adopted mitigated negative declaration 2004-11, and adopt a resolution 2021-XX, recommending that the city council approve the planning and zoning permit number 21-620-02, general plan amendment to change the land use designation of the project site from business research park to residential medium, And adopt a resolution 2021-XX recommending that the city council approve planning and zoning permit number 21-570-02 to change the zoning of the project site from business research park to multiple family. And adopt a resolution 2021-XX recommending that the city council approve planning and zoning permit number 20-300-02 tentative subdivision map for tract number 6064, subject to certain findings and conditions. And adopt a resolution 2021-XX approving planning and zoning permit number 19-500-04, special use permit residential, subject to certain findings and conditions. As a reminder to my colleagues and the public, a pre-recorded presentation is on the city's website and YouTube per Measure M. I now turn to our staff if they have any additional comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. A couple of things. The commission should have received 2 transmittals. One that was sent via email yesterday. There was a comment from Mr. Justin Campbell that has been posted online. The second transmittal was sent via email today, public comment from Ms. Judy Perkins, and that will be posted online tomorrow. Staff will quickly like to go over a few questions that were answered on behalf of staff, responding to some planning commissioner questions. One question was in regards to there being no need for mitigation measure G1 of the previous adopted M&D, which spoke to the need to not place homes within 400 feet of West Fifth Street due to future widening. In terms of that particular mitigation measure, it is no longer needed because there is no future widening of West Fifth Street. Another question was regarding the need for the electrical site plan. That's actually the photometric plan, and the city code ordinance, or excuse me, the zoning ordinance has lighting standards, and so the project has to conform to those lighting standards. And this is the first step of showing that the project conforms to those standards. Another question was regarding the requirements for the retention basins. And so the response to that was that the volume required is based on the size of the project and the amount of impurities proposed. The footprint of the retention basin is then based on the design of the engineer and the infiltration rate of the native soil. Another question was regarding the accurate number of total visitor parking spaces. The total number should be 222. I believe there was an instance where it was mentioned that it was 214, but the accurate number is 222. Another question, another question was regarding condition number 45 of the tentative subdivision map resolution. It speaks to the requirement for the developer to post the availability of these units at the naval base. There is a policy within the 2030 general plan that requires developments to do so. That was also included in attachment E, which was the general plan consistency analysis of this project. And then there were some questions regarding the petition that was received. There was a question as to whether these units were built as condominiums, and the answer is yes, this is a condominium map. Therefore, these units will be built as condominium. The developer has stated that he will retain full ownership of these units and rent them out, but these will be designed as condominium units. Another question was regarding whether the traffic level of service suggests future installation of a traffic signal.
Mr. Figueroa, it sounds like we lost audio from the chamber. No, we can't hear you on the mic.
Chair Chavez, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. One question was, the next question was whether the traffic level of service suggests future installation. And the traffic department has not seen any evidence to require installation. Another question was whether it was unusual to allow only a one-way flow of traffic. And yes, it is atypical for a subdivision to do so. And then finally, there was a question regarding if removing the gates would dissuade new residents from parking outside of the development. Staff feels that with over 160 extra visitor parking spaces that this project is going to provide, there's probably no real reason for residents or visitors to go outside of the gated development to find parking. Another safety issue that has been incorporated into this project has been that these gates will be secured. And so that actually conforms to the attached unit, the condominium advisory standards that this project does not have to conform to, but it has conformed all but one. And then at this time, I would like to introduce staff members that are here to assist in any questions that Planning Commission might have. Mr. Tim Bocum is the city traffic engineer. Mr. Tate Chow is the supervising civil engineer. We also have members from Rincon Consultants who assisted the city in the addendum to the MND, Maddie Mayers, Dr. Jennifer Haddow, and Ryan Thatcher. And we have the applicant team led by the principal, John Carsnell, and Mr. Carsnell will have a presentation for the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Figueroa, for that additional information. If there's no objection from the commission, we'll take the applicant's presentation and then we can just group all questionings together. So Mr. Carsnell, as soon as staff brings up the presentation, please introduce you to the team that you have with you, and then you can go ahead and proceed. Thank you.
Thank all of you for this evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I have the full design team and the team that's worked for nearly 3 years now on this project, trying to find and develop the most suitable development for this site that we believe. And I thank them for being with me as well. And the staff that's put all this effort into the reports and the support and the design and the support, trying to take everybody in this area as a stakeholder in consideration. So with that, I will begin my presentation. Once again, next slide, if you will. These are an infill site, as we all know, and on the two sites of the property, it has commercial activity and adjacent to a commercial activity versus the west and the north. The east has the school, and to the south is a general residential community, as you see here. We think what we are developing is more suitable overall for compatibility of this site than what was previously may have been envisioned. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Did I lose you? Thank you. So as spoken earlier, it's a existing zoning is BRP for commercial, back one slide, please. And that zoning provides for a lot of commercial uses and activities, and those uses we feel are less compatible for lots of reasons for this area. And that's why we've proposed this residential site. Part of the environmental impact study told us that 2/3 of the traffic trips, miles traveled from the site would be reduced to be a residential site as we propose versus the commercial site, which isn't currently entitled to be there. So that's some of and many of the thoughts that supported our ideas to have the community change this, adopt the change for a residential site. Once again, we're producing 90 dwelling units and 45 structures throughout. Everybody has your own dwelling unit, their own parking spaces and visitor spaces. So we think we're very expansive in that nature to ensure that everyone has a very nice living environment. As far as common facilities, we have common facilities, pools, rec areas, as well as open space areas that we think that will more than satisfy the needs of our new homeowners and dwellers. And so we've designed that into the current design. We're adding a bus stop. We think public transportation will aid that here, and the city has provided that ability to add that bus stop. Part of one of our measures that did come out, even though that the negative declaration said there was little to no toxicity or issues related to our soil, we are providing a vapor barrier in the nature of being close to the airport. And so we just think that provides an additional safety level. We're doing that. This project will have an HOA, will govern all the areas within it, in that it has public areas and compliance for everyone within the community. I think that that will add to the assurance that it stays a very nice community through its whole life cycle. Next slide, please. As you can see, we've oriented the site for streetscape and street activities. There won't be any balconies facing outward towards the back or the sides of the units. It will only face the street. It invites a street community and does not propose any type of any hindrance onto any of our neighbors during that for that type of a design. Next slide, please. As you can see, part of the feedback we did get from the neighborhood was to try to mitigate our usage of Portofino Place. And so instead of using that as a sole access point, we've created access points onto 5th Street directly. We do believe that those passageways, a shorter distance between 2 points, people will utilize that in the design. And I think that that will help support what we're looking for, is to be as hospitable as possible with the neighboring homes. Also, we're providing subterranean retention, which we believe would allow us to have the open areas that we've identified here, not necessarily just as a retention area. They will be greenscape areas. So for all access for our patrons and everyone involved. So we think that that added some additional change to our design that we think it'll make even better for all of us. Next slide. Here is a landscape where the current landscape around this area is very heavily treed, and we look to increase that, including a 30-foot buffer, additional buffer that's off of 5th Street. So we think that it's going to have an incredible landscape purview. And I think that we've incorporated most of, we're not removing trees with our development, we're just adding trees to our development. Next slide, please. Once again, another location of those of that landscape. Here's again the frontal view of where each home will have their own entrance point, their own access point, their standout community open space with their balcony, and as well as parking in their driveway for 2 cars, in addition to 2-car garage. Everyone will have 2 cars inside and 2 cars outside availability. And the community also has surface stalls if need be. Next slide. Here, once again, color variation, style variation, one that once played out in the entire community, we think will be very much in keeping with the style in the neighborhood and create a very unique living environment for our folks. Next slide. Here's some color palettes, very modern approach to what we believe will enhance that feeling when you see that. And so here's materials that we'll be using as shown on these slides. Next slides. More of those change. There's not, repetitive one look, one feel, one style. So we've looked, and the design team has looked to bring what we believe, as we saw in the initial rendering of the streetscape, which will give you the most pleasant viewpoints for our community in design and color palettes. Next slide. First, as far as stakeholders, my family and I have grown up and lived in this community all our lives, born and raised in Santa Barbara. We've owned and operated businesses within the Oxnard community for most of all of our adult lives. We have another community very close, within 2 miles away, and that presence we're very proud of, and we've had a great history with that. And I think that we bring that as an extra strength to the table with this new project. Next slide. And some of those things that we speak to of the community that we have a couple miles away is home occupancies, and our tenants have had very, very long periods of time with us, non-traditional, even greater than separate ownership. They've stayed with us, the community, the style, the demographics of who we have in our communities, and just once again speaks to who we are and our commitment to a long-term superior product within the community. And with that, I think that completes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll go to our commissioners if they have any questions of the staff or applicant team. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
Thank you. Quick question. One of the slides, I believe it was slide 20, talked about a 2 traffic calming device. Could staff share a little bit more about what that is and its placement within this development?
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Our civil engineer, our civil traffic engineer Timothy Bocum will answer that question.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. I am Tim Bocum, the city traffic engineer. And the condition that has been placed on the project is to work with us and staff to strategically locate a couple of traffic calming devices out on Portofino Place. We haven't identified specifically where they will go, but what we're envisioning is a device that may be able to address any kind of speeding that may arise out of the additional traffic that might be created by this or future traffic from the adjacent neighborhood. We don't do speed humps any longer as our preferred traffic calming devices. We're looking at other alternatives. If you know some of the names of them, a speed cushion is a device that's strategically designed to allow our fire department engine apparatus to go over it and through it without having to slow down, but it slows down general public vehicles. And so we may have a couple of those along the street. We may have some speed feedback signs, those type of things. And we'll incorporate those into the final design of the subdivision as it comes through.
Okay, great. And as a follow-up, I think staff brought up the public comment from Ms. Perkins, Judy Perkins. She addressed a main concern around traffic, particularly with parents dropping off and picking up their children there at the nearby Soria School, and the soccer practices also on the other side of Patterson, but down 5th Street nonetheless. Could you speak to a little bit about her traffic concerns? She identifies particularly the streets in the Wingfield neighborhood as being highly congested, as well as cars that line up down Dunkirk Drive and park up and down the cross streets with pedestrian traffic. I know that that's outside of the pocket here of this particular development, especially if it's going to be within confines of a gated community. But nonetheless, for people that would be traveling through Portofino or through some of those neighborhood surface streets to circumvent those peak times for school pickup and drop off, if there's anything that you could share to address her concern and perhaps the concerns of parents and other nearby residents, please.
Certainly, thank you very much. I have been out at the site the last few days observing the most recent counts. I think as everybody realizes, we've all been coming out of the COVID effects for literally almost 2 years now. It's hard to even say that, but the traffic volumes aren't really even back to what they were before COVID. They're starting to return. So we are seeing some of the impacts and some of the driving habits that we saw pre-COVID. The one good thing about the, the way that this project is laid out is it really is oriented towards Fifth Street and Portofino. And we've sort of conditioned it to sort of encourage this project's traffic to utilize Fifth Street, recognizing there are some issues along the Dunkirk corridor over to Patterson. I mentioned I was out at the intersection the last couple of days. I was very surprised at the AM and the midday volumes coming off of Portofino Place. I chose a couple of half-hour periods where I felt that the exiting traffic off of Portofino might be having some difficulty getting out. I was surprised. I only saw in the two half-hour periods, I only saw 4 left turn exiting vehicles off of Portofino with the existing land uses. That was surprising to me. So I would imagine that some of that traffic is choosing to use Dunkirk. So I don't think this project will have it will not exacerbate any of those situations down the road. The school has been strategically located where what we do see at Portofino and Fifth Street, there's it's not a high volume of U-turns, but we do have more U-turns occurring at that intersection to get to the school than we actually have people turning left out of Portofino. But as I observed all of that over those periods, they were all being done safely. There was adequate gaps being created. So I don't see this project as having any major negative effect on what's currently going on out in those other neighborhoods.
Great. And let me ask you this, in terms of, again, off of Portofino onto Fifth Street, right now with the 2, observation periods that you conducted, it seemed like it was minimal. So at this point, there wouldn't even need be any consideration for a traffic light there, right?
Yeah, I actually did a cursory review of if the public or the commission doesn't specifically know, City of Oxnard relies quite a bit on the recommended guidelines that the state of California produces. They're generally referred to as signal warrants. They basically give us some criteria that we can use to try and figure out if a traffic signal is going to be a benefit at a location. Many people in the public think a traffic signal is a panacea for all things, but unfortunately they're not. And if they're actually put in the wrong location, they can actually increase accidents, particularly rear end type kind of collisions. They can actually increase pedestrian collisions because a pedestrian may think that they have a right of way, and an improperly placed traffic signal is just as awful as one that's not in place. And so you've got to be very careful. And one of the things that we look at is if the existing traffic isn't at the volume levels, isn't at the delay levels on those side streets. When you put a traffic signal in, you start making that main street stop and stop and stop to allow 8 cars, in a half hour to come out, you're going to probably increase issues out there. And so that's why we rely on those. Generally, what we look for in a side street for one of those peak periods is 100 vehicles. And so 8 in an hour period is pretty far away from 100. The other side of that coin is we look at the delay that a vehicle may have coming out of that side street. So if the main street just has constant traffic and doesn't have gaps to let people out, then that might be a concern where a traffic signal would make sense. And of the 8 vehicles over those 2 periods I observed, 4 of them made a left turn without hardly stopping at all. They pulled up, looked, they had a gap, they moved out. The longest delay I saw was approximately 30 seconds. And the delay that we look for when you trying to make a recommendation for a signal is much higher than that over the full hour period. So I do not believe, and I wouldn't recommend a signal at this location right now. But as other issues may arise out there, it may be something that we look to in the future, but it's not quite right at this point in time.
Great. Thank you so much. No further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. I have some questions for the applicant. On the cover of your presentation, you show a couple of cars that are parked on the street, but as I read the report, on-street parking is not allowed. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was just a rendering omission, since that recommendation we support completely. And so those will be taken out of our final design look.
Yeah, on the issue of fugitive dust and diesel fumes that are generated, especially during the construction phase with grading and such. Have you reached out to the administration or the principal of Juan Soria School to give them a heads up about what your plans are and how you might be able to work together to avoid any of the more negative aspects of the construction impacting the sensitive population at school children?
Absolutely, that's a fantastic comment, and something we have done in the other communities we were working on or building on now. We didn't do it for these purposes as of yet because we didn't want to be preemptive of an approval. Well, we certainly will, and take that into. It's a great comment. It's something that we do look to do to make sure that we're very communicative with our neighbors, everyone, not just the school, but the school is particularly would be a particularly concern of ours to make sure that we would do that. So yes, we would be happy to do that.
Right, and I do appreciate that, and I also appreciate the installation of the vapor barrier that wasn't required, I don't believe, by the city, but I think it's an important aspect of this project. The final thing, are you aware that the county airport authority they're holding a series of meetings to gauge public interest and input on expanding either the Camarillo or the Oxnard airport?
Yes.
Would you include that in the document that you provide to prospective renters and home buyers, that the expansion of the Oxnard airport is a possibility?
Absolutely.
Because I think I don't want to have the public come back to the planning commission and say, well, we were never aware that the airport was going to be expanded, because I believe that the expansion will involve air transport of goods, especially.
Yes, we'd be happy to do that. Thank you. That's a great idea as well.
Okay, I think that I know there was another issue on my brain, but I didn't write it down, so of course I forgot it. So thank you for your responses, and that concludes my statements, Chair Chavez.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Vice Chair Rejo.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. I have a question that I'm going to use as a vehicle to ask also a general question, but it does apply specifically to this project. My question is to staff in regards to the lighting, that the Oxnard City Code does have a standard in regards to how much lighting there is. If and when any project or this project in the future would exceed it, what are the mitigation and or enforcement methods in regards to making sure it doesn't exceed that? I ask that as someone who has crafted a municipal ordinance, obviously in a different state, and it was just in the Ventura County Star in regard to the Ventura Auto Center. Obviously not it's apples and oranges, but I just like to know specifically, and might as well ask in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chair Orejo. So like any other standard that is not abide by a applicant or a property owner, if there's a complaint or staff is made aware of, there will be a code enforcement inquiry. And if it's confirmed, a code enforcement action, and it will be brought into compliance.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Chair. That's all the questions I had.
Thank you. Commissioner Nash.
In going through the report, I saw that I had flagged climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. And this is for either staff or the applicant. But was there any discussion about making all of the buildings all electric and not having any natural gas in order to reduce greenhouse emissions from this project? And either staff or the applicant can answer that.
From Commissioner Nash, this is Isidro with planning. In regards to staff, there's no requirement that they do so, and there was no petition from staff for the applicant to design these homes as you described them. I will let Mr. Carsonell reply in regards to what their thought process was behind the design.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you. And that's a great point. Title 24 is even upped its standard, and there's the California Green advisories that come with California's concern about many of these things that you mentioned. And so we've taken all of those things, or are taking all of those things into our final project consideration. And those things think about charging stations in every garages, and for electric vehicles, and public vehicle charging, and all of those things that would be part of what you're mentioning are some things that we have brought into consideration, and will be implementing as many of those as we can see fit for this development. So generally, hopefully that's answered your question.
Yes, I have one further question for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Are those, you claim that those garages are two car, but can accommodate two cars, but they seem awfully narrow. Is that for side-by-side parking?
Yes, side by side. Yes, they are side by side parking for two cars.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all, Chair Chavez.
Thank you. Any additional questions from the commission? I just have a number of questions, actually, and I'll start with the applicant team first. Commissioner Nash did already begin to touch on it in regards to the parking situation. Part of the report, there was an addition to the 214 to 222 total visitor parking spaces. I'm very curious as to how are those visitor spaces calculated? Is there a designated space? Because I wasn't able to see a designated space for visitor parking. Are the driveway parking considered part of the visitors?
They are.
Okay, so because each garage is able to that counts as two essentially visitor parking spaces.
No, two driveways. The garages aren't part of that calculation. The driveways are. So there's parking availability in each driveway in front of the garages of two spaces.
Correct. They can accommodate two.
That's correct. In addition to the two of the garage, but the visitors are not considered inside the garage.
Correct. Where on the map are those additional parking spaces? Since parking on the street is not available, and I wish we did not have to comply with Measure M on this so that you can actually bring it up. But if you can kind of give me a rough estimate, close to Portofino, closer to Fifth Street, closer to Dunkirk, where is that?
So once again,
Chavez?
oh yeah.
Sorry, Chair Chavez, we can bring up the applicant's presentation, so we're doing so right now.
Okay, I appreciate that, Mr. Kowitz.
So if you'll back up there, yeah. Okay, yeah, those will work. Either one of the ones you just had, go back. Yeah, so that might be harder to see, and then or we can go to the landscape ones.
The landscape. There you go.
There we go. So every unit will have two-car garage, accommodate the unit for the tenants and occupants. And then the driveways will have 2 visitor for each unit. In addition to, you'll see at the bottom left-hand corner, there's additional, all along Portofino Place, there's additional parking in and around the community area buildings. And on the other slide,
Go to the next slide.
you can see it more pictorially here. It basically adjoining the Portofino entrances on both sides. There's an additional visitor parking throughout the front, and at the larger side on the far west side, there's additional parking, just in case you get all the way down there and there's not enough parking available. There's additional parking there as well.
Okay, I appreciate that, and thank you for bringing that up. And we can actually stay on this slide because I have a couple of questions. Now, this slide is considered to be lot 1, the larger side of Portofino, correct?
That's correct.
And then the previous one would be considered lot 2, which is the smaller site. Because in the staff report, it says that amenities such as a common swimming pool, playground, recreational are tenants, because this is a gated community. Will tenants have access to go either side? Because the swimming pool and the playground's on the larger side, whereas the rec room is on the smaller side.
There is walk gates, and obviously they're allowed to go on both sides. It is common access throughout the entire community. So there is these open green spaces as well that we anticipate will be play areas, dog walk areas, activity areas, and they have them on both sides. So yes.
Now the green space, green open spaces that you're referring to the basins, the retention basins?
Yeah, that was our original design. What we hope to, and we have had some support from the staff, that we can actually place the retention portion of those basins underground, in underground retention, allowing us to have those as free open spaces. So that's something that's developed again out of all the great input that we've gotten from so many people. So it's been designed to accommodate either way, and I think we've also looked at the design to have it as underground retention, and so those areas now will become open space within the community.
Awesome. I would hate to see wasted space for no reason. Does this project plan on having any charging stations for electric vehicles in the visitor areas?
It does. It does. Every garage has it, and will have visitor charging stations.
In the visitor area, how many
That's correct.
charging stations?
Excuse me?
How many charging stations?
There's several in the main one, and on the other areas, there's at least one.
Okay. I'm trying to think. When designing for the garages, because again, the renderings that were displayed show that the garages are very narrow, that the properties themselves are very narrow. What type of vehicles were used to determine that 2 vehicles could fit in there side by side?
They're accommodating full-size cars. They weren't. Those are full-size garages. They're and accommodate full-size driveways, right? So there wasn't a diminished standard or anything smaller used. They meet the code standard for a full-size car.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, this is Isidro. The garages have been designed to meet the minimum standards of a residential unit, 20 by 20. So that has not changed. That is the same dimension that a typical residential unit would have to comply with.
I appreciate that, Mr. Figueroa. During the applicant presentation, it was mentioned that a bus stop would be in front of the property, which I'm very confused because there's actually already a cutaway bus stop just on the other side of this property. I think it's right in front of the car wash. So which bus stop are you referring to?
If you'll go to the site plan, if we could switch to
to the one that's kind of
There we go. There we go. It is, well, it's hard to see on that, but it is on the smaller, adjacent from the smaller parcel on the curb line.
Now, this is the Gold Coast Bus Company.
Correct. Mr. Chair, this is Isidro. Gold Coast did recommend that staff incorporate a condition to add a bus stop at right in front of parcel number 2.
Mr. Figueroa, let me ask, how long ago was that condition? Because the route they used to go that way no longer exists.
That condition was incorporated a few weeks ago. It was during our development advisory committee. Gold Coast had mentioned that they would like that bus stop to be incorporated into the project design, and the condition came in a few weeks ago as we were drafting these conditions.
So would that eliminate the current bus stop in front of that car wash to replace the one in front near Portofino, or would both of them be considered active?
I do not have that information with me.
Okay. I want to switch gears to our staff now. The first question, and I'm done with the slideshow. Thank you, staff. Mr. Bokum, quick question on this one. Because the fact that the two properties are essentially joined together, but they're divided by Portofino, will a painted crosswalk or signaling signage be posted to notify motorists as they're going through Portofino that this is a designated crosswalk? And if so, is that going to be placed at the entrance or at one of the other entry gates, if there is any?
Chairperson Chavez, do you mean a crosswalk across the driveways, or are you talking about
across Portofino?
We currently do not have a proposed crosswalk in a mid-block location proposed as part of the project. If you're asking, will there be something that connects the two, I'll call them the circular drive. So off of that, we currently are not planning on having a crosswalk there, just because we don't anticipate a significant amount of pedestrians crossing. One option we may have that I've used in the jurisdiction that I came from is if we do have higher pedestrian crossings, sometimes we incorporate that into our traffic calming feature, and we may actually do a raised crosswalk at that location and sort of use it as a ramping tool at that location. But currently, we don't believe that there will be the need to have a marked crosswalk at that location.
Okay. Again, I only ask that just because essentially residents are allowed to go from A to B to use the pool, the playground, the rec center, and you know, I don't want to see somebody get hit as they're trying to cross.
If I could just respond to that just a little bit. One of the things we will do as part of this project is we will be making sure that nobody will be parking and encroaching into those important visibility areas between those driveways. That will be part of the improvement plans that we have.
I appreciate that, Mr. Welcome. Staff, I'm very interested in regards to the airport. Commissioner Nash briefly touched on in regards to the airport. This particular property falls within that flight path zone or the zone of the airport authority. Has there been any discussions with the airport authority in regards to any opposition, support, or concerns with this project going forward?
Mr. Chair, in conversations with the airport authority, there has been no opposition and no support for this project. The applicant has spoken to them previously where they received guidance in terms of development requirements. And so I will let them speak in regards to those conversations. But again, staff has not received opposition or support for this project.
Okay. I'm also very curious in regards to Quimby funds. Because this site is establishing their own playground, are they required to contribute any Quimby funds to the local parks?
Yes, and they're contained within the conditions of approval.
Thank you for that. So let me go back to the applicant team. Conversations with the airport authority, how have they been?
Okay, I think I'll let you respond to that if you like, or
I
can-
will, sure. Yes, I've spoken to a couple of different people over at the Airport Authority. They were concerned about some of the things that you brought up here tonight. For example, one of the comments was that people who rent at this location should be notified in their rental documents that they are across the street from an airport and that there's noise concerns, etc. They also asked for some conditions, which I believe have been incorporated into the conditions of approval. Things like dual pane windows for noise reduction. And those kinds of things, I can't give you all the ideas because frankly, they've all been incorporated into the conditions that Mr. Figueroa has put together. But it was those kinds of things that came up. Noise control, notifying renters that they're across the street from an airport, that sort of thing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I appreciate that. I know that there was some resistance for a senior center going off of 5th Street. So I was just curious in regards to this particular project. I do have a couple of questions. I don't know who the designer is on the team, but I do have a couple of questions on the design and more of the makeup on how it looks. Now, it was mentioned, and maybe I misunderstood, that it's the color schemes, the type of facet that's going on the sides, it's in line with the rest of the neighborhood, and that's correct?
Yes, and John, the architect of records, John Morelli there, and you can respond to that, John, if you care, or I can.
Okay. I'm also pretty curious in regards to the type of trees that are going to be put into place. A couple of the renderings in the PowerPoint presentation from staff shows palm trees. Is that still an accurate assessment, or was that just a rendering that just put it in there?
No, it's been updated to the type of trees that are in that area currently now.
Okay. Has there been any discussions or considerations for any lighting that's more solar versus on the grid?
Once again, we're taking all the standards in for energy saving in consideration, but actual separate solar lights themselves hasn't currently been identified. We are doing measures that the staff has worked with us on, where we will be changing the lighting out on 5th Street and replacing it with the new city standard, right, of energy efficient light. And so we will be doing that all across the frontage and things like that, but not specifically a solar device individual light.
No, and I appreciate that. And I'm aware that you guys are conditioned to address 5th Street. I'm talking about actually on the actual property, the type of lighting that is going to be utilized. Is it going to be mimicking what the city standard is, or did you plan on going above and beyond the city standard?
We certainly have a decorative desire to go and shielding desire to be above the city standard, but in the city standard, if I don't want to misquote the city standard, but would be fluorescent based, or this would be LED based. So yes, we're looking at what the most energy efficient. I don't want to degrade any other standard, but the most energy efficient one out there that we think is available, and it would be a low wattage LED.
Now, I'm not sure if I missed it, but because you've already mentioned that in the garages, there's going to be charging stations. Is there any solar panels that are going to be placed on top of the actual condos?
That hasn't been a consideration of whether it's approvable or not. I would have to ask Isidro if that's allowable, right? in this zone and in this area?
Excuse me. There will be no issue if the applicant would want to install solar panels on these units.
Okay.
Great, great. Then I'm sure we'll have a solar, some sort of solar support for the project.
Okay. That will conclude my questions. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. Just two quick questions. While we have the applicant here, now you agree that it was a little unclear from the report, but I think that you finally agreed to provide 9 affordable units.
Absolutely. And
5 of those will be for rent and 4 will be for sale.
No, they just have, all 9 will be available for rent. For if we elect at any future time to for sale, we have to meet the for sale standards. So all 9 will be the for rent to begin with.
Okay, thank you.
But both conditions apply regardless of if we transition to sale, then all 9 will have a sale requirement as well.
Okay, thank you. That was a little unclear to me from the report. My next question, it's more of a, I don't know, concern for Mr. Figueroa. But on the section that that provides the text of the ordinance number 2980 on the first page, it says that it's an uncodified ordinance. What does that mean for? Does it have any significance for our deliberations tonight?
This is Ken Roselle. I'm happy to address that issue. Uncodified means that it's not in the municipal code, but it was duly adopted by the city council. So it is something which absolutely applies, but you cannot find it online in our municipal code.
Will it be codified at some future date, or why is it in this status?
That is a very good question. I've represented various cities during my career. Most cities do not have uncodified ordinances. This is something that Oxnard has chosen to do over the years. So this is one ordinance which has not been codified. So this is just the way in which the city has chose to operate over a number of decades.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And I also want to throw in a quick thank you to staff for providing us the development impact fee structure. I appreciate that. And that's all, Chair Chavez.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Commissioner Connolly.
I have a comment that I'm going to turn into a question for both staff and the applicant. Just in regards to the solar comment, I believe that the California Building Code mandates solar on all new single family homes and multifamily homes as of either this year or last year. So I'm just confused on why there was all this debate on solar, because I believe it's a building mandate. If you could correct me, staff, please.
I'll do my best to correct you. I'm not in building, but I did do some research, and the project has to comply with the building code. And so there's 2 sets. There's one where it just basically tells you A, B, and C, and then there's one where basically gives you an array of options. And so therefore, as long as you conform to the building code and the energy calculations, regardless of how you get there, you're allowed to do so. So you're not necessarily obligated to provide solar panels on these units.
Now, that wasn't my understanding when it came out, but thank you for the clarification.
And I don't want to add any more to the confusion, but it also depends on the type of residential. So this was more on the medium side residential. If this was a full, I believe there was a, well, I don't want to confuse because I don't have all the details, but based on my research with building and safety, they said this does not have to provide the solar panels.
Okay, thank you.
And I could add to that a little bit to the clarity. It's something that will help. The Title 24, it did get more restrictive, as you said, and much more difficult to meet those standards without it. So given there's no prohibition for the doing so, and some communities still have that, then it certainly will be easier for us to incorporate it within the design because of the difficulty of meeting the new higher standard. And that is a big lift to get there. So thank you.
Commissioner Conley, maybe we'll get you a better explanation. Our civil engineer is here to answer that question.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, commissioners. My name is Tai Chow. I am the supervising civil engineer from Building and Engineering. This is my first time with the commission, so it is my pleasure to be in front of you tonight. Commissioners, I like to explain it this way in terms of the solar panel requirement. Basically, under the California Building Code, there is a prescribed requirement. What that means is that if you follow that requirement, you are required to put solar panel on your roof of a new single family home. However, you have the opportunity to conform with that requirement through a performance measure. So the performance measure is that you do the calculation to demonstrate that your house is so efficient that it doesn't need the solar panel, if that makes sense. Now, what that means is that you have to do a lot of insulation, a lot of energy efficient measure in your home to even meet that requirement. And as John was alluding to, those requirements are so restrictive that in the end, you are going to end up with the solar panel anyway. I hope that explains.
Thank you, Commissioner Connolly, and thank you, staff, for the response. Any additional questions from staff, from the commission? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing portion for this item. We'll go with our first, where's my list? We'll go for our first speaker. Again, this is the order that it came in. John Collery, followed by Faith Collery.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
All right. Okay. We live adjacent to the smaller parcel. And I understand that the landscaping on the very rear of the property by that concrete swale will be enhanced. Is that correct?
To the applicant.
To the applicant?
Yes, you're correct. It will be.
I'm sorry. We cannot engage in any conversations back and forth. You can provide all your questions and your comments, and then at the end, we'll have the applicant and staff respond. Thank you.
On our parcel, the smaller parcel, it's about 2 or 2.5 feet higher than the parcel to the west. When you start construction, I want to know if that's going to be lowered to the same level as the other side, because that'll raise the height of the duplexes, which will basically be looking into our backyard. That's one question. Let's see. And well, to the city engineer, if there's going to be still allowed a left turn onto 5th Street from Portofino. I know he doesn't want to put a traffic light in there, but if we can still make that left turn, otherwise, you guys are adding 180 plus cars, and they're all not going to make a right turn on 5th Street to get to Victoria to go all the way to Patterson and make a U-turn. So I'm concerned about some of those people driving through Dunkirk, going by the school, which is going to be a nightmare when they're picking up and dropping off the kids. And you also said about a calming device or whatever that is on Portofino. We've been trying in this neighborhood to get one on Dunkirk. That's a separate issue, but just something to think about.
30 seconds left.
Okay. One other question that might seem like a little silly question, but when you guys start construction, we are going to be inundated with gophers here because that property is filled with gophers. I want to know how you're going to mitigate that.
Okay, thank you for your comments. And again, we'll have staff and the applicant team respond once our comment period is over. We'll go to our next speaker, Faith Collery.
Hi there.
Hi, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I just have one question, and it would be for Kate, I believe. Hi, Kate. We've spoken before. Kate, you mentioned that the airport asked that the rental documents disclose that there's an airport across the street. I was also wondering if the rental documents will disclose that that property, as well as Seaview Estates Homes, is sitting on a toxic plume that we found out about last year. And it's being tested every 6 months, the groundwater here. So I hope that you know about that toxic plume from the airport that is in our soil right now. So that's my question. Will the rental documents disclose that also? Because it wasn't disclosed to us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We'll go to our next person, Tina Peters. And again, anybody from the public wishing to speak on this item may use the raise hand feature if you're already on the call. If not, you can dial in with the information that's located at the bottom of your screen. Ms. Peters.
Hi, thank you. I have a couple issues, two major concerns. I want to ask the question, is there going to be allowed left turn off of Portofino onto 5th? Because in a prior meeting, we were told no. The other is, will there be signage to prohibit the U-turn off of 5th in front of Portofino to turn back around toward the school? Because that prohibits traffic from exiting Portofino during traffic hours of early morning. Timothy, you had said you had witnessed the activity at Portofino and 5th, but were you there at 7:30, 8 in the morning when everyone is trying to exit the neighborhood? The other concern is the number of total number of parking spots, garages, and guest spaces on your paperwork on page 14 does not match what your diagram is showing. So I'm still a little confused over how many total cars, but the concern is that there's going to be spillage onto Dunkirk. And if you have that gate that is onto Dunkirk from your property near the school, people will be parking on Dunkirk and walking in the gate. And the other is, if there's no left turn off of Portofino, that traffic, all of that traffic's going to come down Portofino onto Dunkirk over to Southampton Place to get to a signal, because you can rest assured most of the people will be going to Victoria Avenue to leave the area. So if you have 3 right turns out of your development, they're all going to go to either to a traffic signal to make a U-turn, or they're going to come down Dunkirk. So those are the two concerns. The total number of cars and parking spots, that just doesn't make sense on your paperwork. 408 spaces, I don't see that. And where all that traffic is going during high peak times, because getting down Dunkirk to Patterson is impossible during the drop off and pickup times. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Peters, for your comments. We do see Miguel Diaz requesting to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. So yeah, my concerns are with Soria School already at capacity. I'm in the neighborhood right on Dunkirk and Northport. When we initially moved here, it took 2 or 3 years to have our son enrolled in Soria because the school was at capacity. So adding, another 90 families worth of, maybe not 90, but adding another load of kids to the school and, where they have access to a school. Another concern is access to Dunkirk Drive. It sounds like there's no parking planned for the Portofino place on the streets, but they will be parking on our public streets, and like a lot of other apartments and condominiums, where there's just overflow on public streets. And as it is, we have streets full of cars, and how much more traffic and parking will this add to it? The toxic plume concerns that we just recently were made aware of, is that obviously, like mentioned earlier, letting the residents know about this. And the overflow of traffic on Dunkirk, already a lot of traffic, and how much more traffic is this going to add to our streets as well, Dunkirk, Northport, Portofino. I think these are things of concerns for us homeowners here that are right down the street from the project. That's it. That's all I have. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz, for your comments. We do see a Brian Feinerman requesting to speak.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, I wanted to thank the commissioners and everyone involved in the project, as well as the community, for all of the comments. My name is Brian Finnerman, and I actually am the owner. My family is the owner of this property. We've owned it for a very long time. My dad used to be a farmer in Oxnard, and his major office and headquarters was off of 3rd Street in Oxnard. He used to farm this land. In the 80s, we looked at doing an Oxnard business park, which went everything all the way from Victoria all the way across the soccer fields. It was 185 acres. We've been through various rounds, and this area across from the airport has created the soccer fields. It has created the elementary school. It has created what is on the corner of Victoria and West 5th Street. I do believe, and as well as the other people involved, that this is the highest and best use for this property. We've looked at a VA hospital, an Amazon distribution center, a senior center, things that might have been using the BRP zoning, and understanding the comments about traffic, driving, and I do believe that the applicant, John, as well as staff and everyone involved in the city, will address these concerns very well. And I really do appreciate the time and the ability to, analyze this project together with everyone. And we are supportive of it. And we used to live in Oxnard. We used to live off of Channel Islands and Victoria. We love this area. And like I said, we've owned this property since the 60s, starting with my father. And we hope that everything continues to move smoothly and supportive for everyone's comments, and that all of that gets blended into making the best use of the community for Oxnard, for the residents, for the community. And we're very supportive of it. So appreciate that time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. At this time, we'll go ahead and move into the 3-minute period to allow any additional members of the public to join in our meeting. Again, this is time for 3 minutes. If you wish to participate in this item and provide comments, you may do so by connecting with the information on the bottom of your screen.
And Chair Chavez, this is Scott Kolbitz coming to you from the council chambers. There were a number of questions that were asked of the members of the public that we can provide responses to. We're going to wait for the 3 minutes to go by to see if there's any additional comments, but I just want to let you know that we're on standby for that. In addition, wanted to share that as the project has gone through its iterations, if you will, one of the newest things that we talked about coming into the hearing was changing the detention facilities to level fields, if you will, or level areas. Our building and engineering team has some suggested revisions to some of the conditions to make sure that that occurs as part of the project. So when we actually wrap up some of the public comments, we wanted to talk about a few recommended changes to those conditions. So I wanted to just preface some staff comments that'll be coming up in a little bit.
I appreciate that, Mr. Kovitz.
Hello, Commissioner. It's been 3 minutes and I haven't received any new speakers.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, for that. We'll turn to staff to respond to comments that were made by the public and any additional information to provide.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Isidro. So I'll speak briefly on the parking. There's a concern that residents will go onto Dunkirk to park there on the public street. For a project of this size, the requirement is that the project provides 60 visitor parking spaces. This particular project will provide over 200 or 222 visitor parking spaces, which consists of 180 or 2 per unit, plus 36 surface parking spaces and 6 motorcycle spaces. So essentially, each unit will have 4 dedicated parking spaces, 2 in the garage and 2 on the driveway. I think staff is of the opinion that there really will not be a need for tenants or visitors to seek parking outside of the gated community. In regards to the landscaping and the elevation questions, I'll have Ty Chow, our civil engineer, respond to those inquiries.
Chair and commissioners, I'd like to share with you some information about the existing landscaping that are all on the south side of the project along the block wall. There is right now an existing 10-foot easement for the landscaping, and this easement falls under the Department of Public Works Special Maintenance District number 55. This project is required to take over that maintenance responsibility and essentially going to take over, in my opinion, roughly 95% of the maintenance responsibility away from the special maintenance districts. So what that means is that the existing homeowners will no longer be required to pay into the maintenance district for the maintenance of the sidewalk in front of Portofino, as well as the existing landscaping, trees and vegetation that are along the project as well. As far as the elevation along the project along the block wall, the elevation can only be as high as the existing dirt that is up against the block wall, if that makes sense. And that concludes my information for the landscape and also the elevation. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Isidro again. There was a question about the plume, and I'll have Rincon, Maddie Meggers, address that concern. But again, the addendum M&D didn't identify any significant impact, and so I'll have Rincon respond to that particular inquiry. Maddie?
Thank you, Isidro. This is Maddie Majors from Rincon Consultants, and we prepared the addendum to the 2004 MND. So Chair and Commissioners, thank you for having us today. Regarding the soil vapor concerns and the plume from the nearby AVEX facility, our team has reviewed the studies that have been done on the subject property, as well as the properties in the vicinity, including the school. And based on our review of those assessments, we concluded in the environmental document that it was unlikely that the soil vapor in the area would result in a risk to residents or persons on site due to the levels and data that has been provided to date. That being said, in the event that there are soil vapor levels in exceedance of regulatory standards, our understanding is that the applicant would be required to provide to provide some design components to ensure that residents aren't exposed to levels exceeding standards. And I do have one of our environmental site assessment professionals here with me, Ryan Thatcher, and I'd like to see if Ryan would like to add anything.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Maddie. Yeah, in short, we've reviewed data that were available collected by another consulting firm, WSP, related to the former Pneumo ABEX site. And what we see from the data they've collected is that groundwater beneath this proposed development, as well as the soil vapor associated with groundwater that's impacted from the site, is not causing soil vapor impacts that exceed residential screening levels. That said, there are trace contaminants that have been identified in the soil vapor beneath this project's footprint. I believe as we heard earlier, there is a plan for vapor barriers to be installed with this project, which will provide the insurance and security that occupants of these structures will not be impacted by any contaminants that are present as a result of this nearby impacted site.
This is Isidro again. Thank you, Rincon. And at this time, I'll hand it over to Tim to address all of the inquiries regarding traffic.
Thank you, Isidro, and Chair and Planning Commissioners. I'll respond to some of the requests. Both Mr. Collery and Ms. Peters asked the question about left turn restrictions coming out of Portofino Place. The intent is not to restrict those at this time. My understanding is there was some discussion previously about possibly restricting left turns out of both the driveway across the street as well as Portofino Place, and then require the project to exit the two driveways and actually add to the U-turning traffic at that location and ones down the road. That is not the plan of action at this point. We'll be maintaining that full left turn out of Portofino at all times of the day. I can't say never is never because some things may happen in the future, but it doesn't seem to be a location, particularly after watching it operate, that I feel that left turn restrictions need to take place. Ms. Peters did ask what time I was out there. I did strategically time my half hour from 7:40 in the morning to 8:10, just to sort of coincide with both any kind of commute traffic that may be coming out of the residential neighborhood and also observe some of the elementary traffic. I only recorded the first 30 minutes just from a mathematical standpoint, but actually stayed out there for an additional 15 to 20 minutes in the AM just to observe the elementary traffic going to the site. And those conditions are very similar to the 30 minutes that I observed. There was also a question about or a request to possibly restrict the U-turns for the westbound direction. That would be for the vehicles that are getting into the left turn pocket and doing a U-turn to head eastward, both to access, I would imagine, the elementary drive as well as other locations on the street. That would not be my suggestion at this point, particularly based on the observations I saw recently. Almost all of the U-turns that I saw had available gaps that were there in the traffic, the approach traffic. They were doing them very safely, both in the AM and the PM, the AM and the afternoon periods that I observed. We normally look to restrict those when we start seeing safety issues arise, people making poor choices, possibly coming into conflict with right turning traffic, those type of things. I did not observe that. So my recommendation would not be to restrict the U-turns at this point. I don't really think it would be necessary at this point. I did want to follow up on Isidro's comment about on-site parking and Mr. Diaz's concern. As a new person to Oxnard and actually, getting many of the parking complaints in our residential neighborhoods, particularly some of our newer areas, I haven't seen a project that's proposing this number of additional visitor stalls on site. I think that goes a long way to alleviating some of the other things that I'm seeing in some of our more recent neighborhoods where we've attempted to reduce the parking requirements to possibly get better street conditions and maybe lotting patterns, those type of things. But people have more than 2 cars. And so we see that spill out into the public right away. I don't know if it will happen here, but I also know that as a rental area, a landlord has a little bit more discretion on how to deal with poor parkers in an area than even I do, where homeowners don't necessarily follow the laws and the red curb and all the things that I put out to try and keep them from parking in an intersection or where they shouldn't be. So my final comment would just be one about the request on Dunkirk and some concerns about traffic and traffic calming. As mentioned in the staff report and earlier by myself and Isidro, we did establish a condition to place 2 traffic calming devices on Portofino. We basically thought there might be the possibility of some speeds getting a little bit higher than the 25. That's the objective of that street. At the commission's discretion and with the applicant's approval, staff can certainly work with them. We might be able to apply one of those traffic control calming features around the corner on Dunkirk. I don't know if it would be to the west of Portofino or possibly to the east of the school, but that is something that I think we could do if in fact the commission is interested in doing something for the concerns about Dunkirk. So with that, I can answer any questions for the commission.
Mr. Figueroa,
Yes,
was that it of all of staff's?
yes, it was. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Kolowitz had something to.
Yeah, Chair Chavez, I just wanted to share with the full commission as well that staff does have some recommended edits to a few of the conditions. In both the tentative subdivision map resolution as well as the special use permit, there's a condition regarding notification to potential home buyers relative to the airport and noise. In the map, it's condition number 60. In the special use permit, it's number 188. And essentially, the condition language as it's read today talks about providing potential notice to home buyers, disclosing the presence of the airport and the helicopter paths. And what we would suggest is that the language be modified slightly to reference both potential home buyers as well as renters. and to have it not only disclose the helicopter flight path in the airport, but also the expansion of the Oxnard Airport as well. And if you would like us to read the full language that we've written up, we can do so, but that captures the spirit of the edit that we would be looking at. So that's one edit in both of those documents. And in addition, I made reference to some conditions we think we should modify relative to the detention facilities. And with that, if I could call Tai Chao back up to the microphone to share which conditions would be modified. And we could either summarize or read the condition language directly. After we do that, since we are suggesting condition modifications, if the Planning Commission is interested in that, I think it's also fair and appropriate to have the applicant's response to those edits as well. But with that, I'll turn it over to Tai.
Thank you, Kowitz. Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I have the pleasure of working with the developers engineer over the course of the last 6 months on the engineering matter pertaining the stormwater. And while we were focusing on providing a lot of the stormwater facility above ground, I am delighted to hear the foresight and the creativity of the development team to be putting those facility underground. And as such, I would like to suggest that conditions number 259, 260, 261, and 262 to be modified into one conditions that essentially require the development team to design and construct the detention, retention, and infiltration facility to be underground, meeting the City of Oxnard stormwater requirements, as well as the 2011 Technical Guidance Manual for Stormwater Control. And I can read the whole entire condition if that is what the commission wishes me to do.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Developers shall design the detention, retention, and infiltration facility to be underground, meeting the requirements of the City of Oxnard and the 2011 Technical Guidance Manual for Stormwater Control. The design must include an access vault for each facility for inspection and maintenance purposes. Developers shall provide a confirmation letter from the project geotechnical engineer approving the design, location of all detention, retention, and infiltration facility, including a minimum setback requirement of 8 feet from any structures. The letter shall confirm that the design shall conform to the geotechnical engineer recommendation for structural and geotechnical setbacks from ownership lines sufficient to protect adjacent owners from negative impacts. Developers shall provide calculations demonstrating that the proposed detention, retention, and infiltration facilities will not negatively impact the structural integrity of foundation support of the adjacent block wall or residential homes.
Thank you for that. Mr. Kowitz, any additional changes to the conditions?
Chair Chavez and members of the commission, no more are recommended from staff at this point in time, but we're here for questions if any of you would have them. And again, I would suggest that we ask the applicant team if they are amenable to those conditions revisions.
Yes, I will get to that. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. Mr. Kowitz, I would, whatever the pleasure of the full planning commission is, but I would certainly like to hear the full edit of the airport noise notification that you're proposing.
Commissioner Nash, this is Isidro. So I'll read it out to you and the commission. The applicant shall provide a notice to potential home buyers and renters disclosing the presence of the Oxnard Airport in a helicopter flight path along West 5th Street and the potential expansion of the Oxnard Airport. The applicant shall provide such notice to each home buyer and renters to obtain signatures acknowledging the presence of the Oxnard Airport and helicopter flight path along West 5th Street and the potential expansion of the Oxnard Airport.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Chavez.
No problem. Mr. Figueroa, just real quick, that is modifications to conditions number 60 for the tentative subdivision and number 188 for the special use permit, correct?
Correct, Mr. Chair.
And for the basin retention, we are combining 259 to 262.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Now, the combination of those four for the basin, is that going to just have one number, or are they just?
It would eliminate the numbering. Well, the numbering will be adjusted to just be one.
Okay. All right. Through the recommendation of Mr. Colwitz, I'm going to allow the applicant team a total of 5 minutes to wrap up their comments and to address the modifications to the conditions. So staff, if we can put 5 minutes again for the applicant team to respond first to the conditions modifications that staff recommended, and any final comments that you want to provide before the commission moves into deliberations. Thank you.
So thank you very much. We'll accept and support the modifications as read and as recommended, for one. Number two, I also wanted to grab, while I have a moment here, we do know that there's been a gopher problem. And so we've started a mitigation now, and we'll be out monthly trying to eradicate those pests and to try to get ahead of any construction timeline. So I'm glad that was brought up. It is brought to our attention, and we do know about that. And we do support pretty much all the other comments that staff has recommended and have been mentioned today. So with that, I conclude my comments.
And Chair Chavez, it looks like you're muted.
I knew it was going to happen to me one day. If there's no further comments from the applicant team, then we'll go ahead. I know you're loving that, Commissioner Nash. We'll go ahead and move to our commissioners for deliberation on this item. Commissioners. Vice Chair Rejo.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. First off, I'd like to profusely thank Mr. Figueroa and obviously anyone who had to help him with this staff report. Just in my initial run through, I had a couple dozen questions which were quickly answered either by email before the meeting or throughout the report. And at this time, in regards to the recommendation by staff and the probable proposed amendments to it that will be made, I am currently in support of how it stands due to the following reasons. The 4 reasons in particular are that I'm glad that the City Council did have, or that the developer did decide after City Council discussion to not go with the in lieu fees and to provide affordable housing. I think that if in lieu fees were paid by the developer instead of affordable housing, I would have been leaning more towards against the recommendation. In regards to the zoning change from BRP to R2, I think it's, I don't want to say it's obvious, but it is arguable that Oxnard and the greater region needs housing. And so I think that in regards to this being an infill development, this is an appropriate and probably a good project for the site. In regards to the LMV, I was quite surprised that there is a decrease into it relative to the previous permit for this site. I don't know if it was approved, but relative to the previous permit included in our packet, that there was a significant decrease. And so that's only a pro in approving this, the recommended action. And just in regards to the housing continuum in Oxnard, I still believe that Oxnard lags behind some of the cities in Oxnard in providing that continuum of housing from birth to retirement. And I believe that this type of development with, I'd like to informally call an almost house, something that you would get after a few years after being a young professional, maybe as you're thinking of having a family. I think this is a very good transition into possibly getting a single family house if that is so desired by whoever gets this or rents this property. And so at this time, I recommend to my fellow commissioners to approve the recommendation as presented by staff, including the amendments, I assume. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Rejo. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
Thank you. Just to echo Vice Chair Arrojo's comments, I too very much appreciated the applicant's willingness to take in the feedback, not only from our planning staff and the department, but with everything that has been presented to you. And being so open to those suggestions to only build a more, I'll say, a better final product. I appreciated the reference to the other condominium or townhome project that your family has. Very well familiar to it, having grown up in the Sierra neighborhood in the latter part of my childhood and into adulthood. And so, it's always been a great, also little pocket development there off of 7th Street, if I'm not mistaken, 7th and 9th, or between 7th and 9th. And so, I appreciate the information about how long your tenants have been with you, especially significant proportion of community members that have lived in your properties for 5, 10, 15 plus years. I think it says a lot about how happy people are living in the residential units that you provide. And of course, seeing that it meets the city's 2030 general plan for residential policies, very much in compliance, and creates additional housing stock and opportunities for our residents. I too very much appreciated that you didn't buy out of providing the 10% affordable units. I think it is such a need for it, and appreciate you including it in your project, as well as being open to condition 10, which was the establishment of an HOA for the rental units. I know that one of the community members that wrote into us, I think, was under the impression that HOAs can only perhaps be in operation if they're owner occupied or owner units. But in this case, condition 10 talks about the HOA establishment. And so like my fellow commissioner, Vice Chair Rejo, I too am prepared to support with the additional modifications or amendments that staff just provided to us now. And also just thank the public who chimed in with your feedback, whether it was in person today with your comments or your emails. It's important for us to hear from those most closely impacted, or from your future neighbors there. Very much appreciate everyone's work, the thorough deliberation, and I'm also prepared to support this applicant tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Any additional comments from the commission? I'll just make a few comments. That I'm pleased that the basin retention got adjusted. There is a property in North Oxnard that has the basin retention, and it's cut off from the rest of the people. Nobody could access it. It's not flat out. And it's just a complete waste of space. So many potential opportunities there, and it's just wasted. So I'm glad that the applicant team working with city staff realized that it's better to just level it out, have it underground, so that it could still be an opportunity to have some type of recreation on it or just hang out, for a moment. I'm very surprised that there was no opposition from the airport authority, because just a few years ago, they were in opposition of the city of Oxnard putting their senior center just on the other side of Sodia School. So I'm very surprised that there was no opposition to this project. As we all know, schools are outside of the realm of cities. Schools can just pretty much say, I'm going to build here, and then nobody has a say. But I'm very, very surprised by that. I hear the residents' concerns with the traffic, and I'm glad that Mr. Bokum was able to go out there and visit the site a few times at different times of the day to be able to view the traffic flow. I would personally like to have staff revisit the area when it comes to the traffic and to reassess it to see if changes need to be made. And which leads me back to what we were looking at with the Starbucks, their traffic mitigation management plan. Because that is such a concern for this neighborhood, and when these 90 units are coming in, that does not sound like a bad thing not to have part of this project, to have some type of traffic mitigation management plan. So that staff is able to review and determine that if something needs to be changed, then it could be adjusted, whether it's putting traffic signal lights. And I understand what Mr. Bokum was saying, and maybe not necessarily traffic lights, but preventing left turns or U-turns or whatever to make traffic flow as easy as possible. Heard a lot about more traffic on Dunkirk and the concerns that it's going to increase. I wish we had somebody from the school district, just because anytime a housing project comes in near the school, there is that potential that they will have an impact from the number of families that come into the area. It's not a bad thing, but many parents prefer to have smaller class size so that there's more attention from the teacher to the student. As already mentioned, the project is good in the sense that it's increasing our housing inventory, which we definitely need, especially here in California. One thing I don't like, and it's not necessarily just this project, but it's multiple projects in general, is just doing the bare minimum and just saying, well, we follow this, we follow that, that's it. I would prefer developers to come into my city that I was born and raised in and go above and beyond. And what I mean by that is just don't do the bare minimum to make a quick buck. Go above and beyond, especially when you're setting up shop in this city, the largest city in Ventura County. That will conclude my comments. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. Assuming that deliberation is over, I would like to move that the Planning Commission approve and adopt the resolutions A, B, C, D, and E. I'll let our chairman read the full text and also approve the staff proposed edits to the conditions. I think that covers it. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
I'll second. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been moved and second for the Portofino project to adopt the resolution 2021 XX recommending that the City Council adopt an addendum to previously adopted mitigated negative declaration 2004-11 and adopt the resolution 2021 XX recommending that the City Council approve planning and zoning permit number 20-620-02 general plan amendment to change the land use designation of the project site from business research park to residential medium, and adopt a resolution 2021 XX recommending that the city council approve planning and zoning permit number 20-570-02 zone change to change the zoning of the project site from business research park to multiple family, and adopt a resolution 2021 XX recommending that the city council approve planning and zoning permit number 20-300-02 tentative subdivision map and tract number 6064, subject to certain findings and conditions. And finally, adopt a resolution 2021 XX approving planning and zoning permit number 19-500-04, special use permit residential, subject to certain findings and conditions. And as well as the conditions of approval modifications, number 60, 188 and the special use permit, and the basin retention combining 259, 260, 261, and 262. Is there any discussions on that motion? Vice Chair Rejo.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. At this time, I raise a point of parliamentary inquiry and request that if a commissioner wanted to make an amendment in regards to adding a traffic study in some certain length of time from now, or from approval of the permits, or from completion of the project, where would one make that, which resolution would that commissioner make that amendment to? And if not you, Chair, if it could be directed to staff.
I think we'll have to turn to Mr. Roselle on that one.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. The issue that there is with requiring a traffic study after the project has been approved is that you are, and let me just turn here to do this, you are adopting an addendum to a previously approved mitigated negative declaration. To the extent that the Planning Commission believes that the traffic impacts of this project are not being properly mitigated, you could not adopt the addendum. So to the extent that you're requiring a traffic study after the fact, this would require that this project be tabled and additional environmental review, potentially a negative deck or an EIR be prepared. So that is clearly something that you could consider, but it would mean that you could not approve the project this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Mr. Roselle through him. I acknowledge those comments.
Thank you. Any additional comments on the motion? Mr. Roselle, just real quick, with the, and I'm sorry for using this last project, but the last project that we had, that traffic mitigation management plan, it was one of the conditions or part of the plan. You're saying that we can't incorporate it into tonight because of the 2004?
They are very different projects. I'm assuming, Chair Chavez, you're referring to the Starbucks project. That is a commercial development, which is very different from this project, which is a proposed residential development, including a track map. So basically with the Starbucks, it's an ongoing project, conditions, et cetera, where there's the ability to make tweaks to the particular project. So going back to Starbucks, there could be issues regarding the way that the traffic from the project would back up onto Vineyard. And so there's ongoing ability to tweak the project as it goes forward based on the actual way in which the Starbucks generates traffic and generates those other impacts. Here you are having a project where you have limited ability to make the changes once it's developed. You can't add new turn lanes. You can't rip out homes to require other kinds of improvements. In essence, you need to mitigate the impacts with the development of the site, because there is not that ongoing ability to make changes once you are developed. So these are kind of apples and oranges between a commercial project, a Starbucks, versus a residential development, which is subdividing property.
I appreciate that explanation, Mr. Rosell. I will just say that these are the concerns that I have when there are limited exit points. In this case, there's a limited exit points into 5th Street. There's a limited exit points into Victoria, because you're snaking through the entire neighborhood to get out. We don't know what the impacts will be when these 90 units come online. And it's unfortunate, but that's the end of my comments. The motion is on the table. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Secretary, if we can have the roll call, please.
Commissioner Nash,
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Owejo,
Aye.
Commissioner Connolly,
Aye.
Commissioner Sanchez,
Yes.
Chair Chavez.
No.
Motion passes.
Thank you for that, and congratulations to the applicant team. We'll go ahead and move to our next item, which is study session reports. Nothing is listed. We'll go to Planning Commission business. Commissioners. Commissioner Connolly.
I was expecting to see the Vineyard Starbucks on this agenda and didn't see it. Just wondering why. Not that I want to make the meeting longer, but just wondering, because I thought we discussed that last on the 4th, that it was going to be tabled till this week.
Commissioner Conley, I could respond to that very briefly. We actually continued it to December 2nd.
Thank you. Perfect.
Any additional business from the commission? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go to community development staff updates. Mr. Collins.
Chair Chavez, thank you for that. Just a couple very brief announcements. I've been informing the Planning Commission that yesterday, November 17th, LAFCO, the Local Agency Formation Commission, was to review the Rio Urbana annexation proposal. That meeting started well with us hearing the item. We made it through the staff presentations. And then we got into a very strange technical difficulty with the audio, just starting to loop over and over and over again. So that meeting actually ended early without action, other than continuing the item to a special meeting being called on December 15th, hopefully without technical difficulties with audio. So I'll continue to keep you all apprised of that one. And I hope to report after December 15th that that project had been approved. So that's what the city is advocating for that one. The only other announcement that I have to share with you is your next meeting is December 2nd. As Commissioner Conley just asked, the Starbucks project will be returning that day. To inform all of you as well, I have had a conversation with Commissioner Sanchez and gave him direction to make sure he watched the video so he is fully informed of the whole conversation. We are expecting all 7 commissioners at that meeting, and we will see what final action comes out at the end of that one. And we are having one other item that'll be on that calendar, another returning project that you weren't expecting. So without going into much detail, the Encanto subdivision project that you reviewed a handful of meetings ago, after we finished deliberations and the Planning Commission provided the recommendation of approval on that one to move forward, we found out that there was a desire to actually change the property dimensions with a property owner to the north. We'll share a fuller story when we bring that back to you on December 2nd. But that means that the proposal it's changing slightly, and we need to readopt documents to allow that project to move forward. So both of those coming right after Thanksgiving. The materials that you'll have to review, we're hoping that they're not too thick, if you will. We are anticipating releasing that packet this next week before Thanksgiving holiday start for most all of you. But those will be the only 2 items on that actual calendar. In terms of projects, we will also have the AB 361 teleconferencing resolution on that agenda as well, so we can keep hosting our virtual meetings. Aside from that, happy early Thanksgiving from all of staff. Very thankful and appreciative of what you do at each and every one of these meetings, especially when it involves digesting a very, very thick packet like the one that we sent to you just over a week ago. So with that, thank you and wishing you all a good holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Colwitz. Vice Chair Rejo.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. A question for Mr. Colwitz, not to overly belabor my question in regards to the bylaws that were amended and passed by this commission. I was wondering if they will be brought up to City Council for consideration next month. The only reason I'm asking that is just there are a couple of technical and scheduling related reasons that I would personally and partially professionally would like it to be considered by the end of this year instead of being considered next year. If you have any information in regards to that, and if not at this time, if you have any updates in the future, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, Vice Chair Araujo, thank you very much for the question. I don't have that update. I'm not in charge of that that particular calendar. We're working with city attorneys, community development director and city manager's office with the city clerk to move that one forward. But I don't have the calendar date itself to share with you at this time.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Colwitz.
Thank you. Is there any additional comments or questions for Mr. Colwitz? Since there's no further business for the commission, if there's no objection to adjourning, we will be adjourning to our next meeting on Thursday, December 2nd, 2021 at 6 p.m. As always, commissioners, thank you for all your hard work. Staff, thank you very much. And happy early Thanksgiving. Remember, stay safe. Good night.
Okay. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you. Y'all take care. Happy Thanksgiving.